That would be, for lack of a better term, a good problem to have to figure out how to negotiate a peace, because we're actually negotiating a peace while the shooting is stopped.
Is the mineral deal essentially the security guarantee that you guys envision? And then the second question is, President Trump appealed to a lot of Americans during his campaign on free speech arguments and not suppressing speech, especially from the government. But your revocation of the green card, to many, is seen as one of the most anti-speech actions a secretary can take with his powers. How do you respond?
Yeah, I mean, the first question was again
is the
minerals deal
version of the security guarantee?
Well, I think that a minerals deal is something that I think is beneficial for both countries. Certainly, one of the things that provides for Ukraine's long-term prosperity and security is vibrant economic growth and development. If their GDP begins to grow, and that gives them a tremendous amount of leverage and power and the ability to fund their own defenses. So I think certainly any economic development for Ukraine is positive for their own future. Obviously, if the United States has a vested economic interest somewhere, we're tied to them on an economic front, we're in partnership with them on something, we will have an interest in the future of Ukraine as well. I wouldn't couch it as a security guarantee, but certainly if the United States has a vested economic interest that's generating revenue for our people as well as for the people of Ukraine, we'd have a vested interest in protecting it if it were to be challenged or threatened. On your first point, when you enter this is an important point, and I'm glad you asked this question. When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country, as on a visitor's visa, okay? You are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student, and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities. I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would. If you actually end up doing that, once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa while you're here in those activities, we're gonna kick you out. It's as simple as that. This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with. No one has a right to a student visa. No one has a right to a green card, by the way. So when you apply for a student visa or any visa to enter the United States, we have a right to deny you for virtually any reason. But I think being a supporter of Hamas and coming into our universities and turning them upside down and being complicit in what are clearly crimes of vandalization, complicit in shutting down learning institutions. There are kids at these schools that can't go to class. You pay all this money to these high-priced schools that are supposed to be of great esteem, and you can't even go to class. You're afraid to go to class because these lunatics are running around with covers on their face, screaming terrifying things. If you told us that's what you intended to do when you came to America, we would have never let you in. And if you do it once you get in, we're going to revoke it and kick you out.
Can I ask you about the Canada trip? The president has taunted, if you will, Canada, calling the 51st state, calling Prime Minister Trudeau governor.
It should become the 51st state from an economic standpoint. He says if they became the 51st state, we wouldn't have to worry about the border and fentanyl coming across, because now we would be able to manage that. He's made an argument that it's their interest to do so. Obviously, the Canadians don't agree, apparently, but...
Do you agree with this? Should they be, if ever going to discuss that, becoming the 51st?
Well, that's not what we're going to discuss at the G7, and that's not what we're going to be discussing in our trip here. So they're the host nation, and we have a lot of other things we work on together. We defend North America through NORAD and the airspace of our continent together. So not to mention the issues of Ukraine and other commonalities. So we're going to be focused in the G7 on all of those things. That's what the meeting is about. It is not a meeting about how we're going to take over Canada.
Are you concerned at all about the reception getting, particularly the event?
I don't know. Should I be? What do you know that I don't know?
They're unhappy.
I don't know. You got the tariffs in the last 12 hours. You've just seen this escalating trade war with not just with Canada, but with the exception of Japan, all the other members of the G7.
Yeah. So what's your point?
Are you worried about alienating the Canadians, that they wouldn't work with the United States?
Yeah, I mean, they've invited us to come. We intend to go. I mean, the alternative is to not go. I think that would actually make things worse, not better. So it's a G7 summit. Huh?
I think the alternative could be not to have tariffs or not to have the language of the president.
No, those are policy decisions. And so at the end of the day, the president's made those decisions. He's explained why. It's not just against Canada. It's not just against Mexico. It's not just against G7 countries. He's imposed steel and aluminum tariffs now on virtually the entire world. And the reason why is not to punish those countries. It's because he has outlined the need to develop a domestic capability. If you don't have steel and aluminum, you can't build warships. You can't build airplanes. You're not an industrial economy. There are things we have to be able to protect, and there's a lot of unfair trade practices. A lot of countries out there who subsidize their industries so that they can gain global market share. So they subsidize the industries, they're operating at a loss. Meanwhile, our industries are trying to compete fairly, and that's why you don't have steel plants, and that's why you can't produce the aluminum. And that really threatens our national security in the long term. So these are national security concerns when it comes to steel and aluminum and some of these other products. But ultimately, the president feels strongly, and I personally agree, that we have made some decisions when it comes to trade policies that have led to the deindustrialization of America and have left us deeply vulnerable to any sort of interruptions in global supplies and or it being used to extort us, not to mention our inability to produce things that we need for our own economy and for our own defense. So that's what those policies are about. Every country in the world we expect will act in their national interest. The United States forgot that. President Trump is reminding us of that and getting us back to that. And I think it is quite possible that we could do these things and at the same time deal in a constructive way with our allies and friends and partners on all the other issues that we work together on. And that's what I expect out of the G7 in Canada.
Can I just ask on Russia, did you have or Waltz have any contact with Zelensky while you were in Saudi Arabia?
No,
And then
I didn't. I don't believe Mr. Waltz did either, but I did not. But that was the team he selected, and it was appropriate. It was his closest advisor, it was their foreign minister, it was their head of security. So we felt that that was the counterparts they sent and to deal with us, and that's obviously pretty common in these sorts of things. Generally, the heads of state meets heads of state, and appropriate counterparts meet others. I imagine he had to get back, and he's the president of a wartime country. So he's, but we did not have any contact with him there. But I wouldn't read anything into it other than he selected his team for these talks, and the president selected his. So.
was there any discussion with the Ukrainians about how a ceasefire, if Russia agrees, would be enforced, and how would the U.S. ensure part
Yeah,
of
well, the interesting thing about modern warfare is it's easier than ever to monitor, and simply because there's so many eyes on the ground, and there's also all sorts of overhead, commercial satellite and the like. It would be pretty hard to hide drone strikes. It would be hard to hide missile strikes, ballistic strikes, artillery. So we feel like that is something that could be monitored. Obviously, if in fact the Russians say yes, let's hope they say yes. If they say yes, one of the things we'll have to determine is who do both sides trust to be on the ground to sort of monitor some of the small arms fires and exchanges that could happen. But those are practices that have become common in these, and I don't think that would be difficult to set up. We didn't get into specifics, but obviously the need to monitor a ceasefire is clear to everyone.
Sir, just a quick follow-up on this question.
This is it.
Yeah, because
You
we're
haven't-
up and have to get back on the
Last
plane.
question, sir. This administration has not hesitated to put a lot of pressure on Ukraine. You reduce their intelligence support in the middle of a shooting war. You temporarily cut off their arms. Criticize them publicly, not you, but leadership in public. Are you truly prepared to apply pressure on Russia should it be recalcitrant and not agree to the terms of the ceasefire? There's been no concrete action that this administration has taken to punish Russia since it's come to office.
There's a couple points. To be clear, as far as I am aware, the United States has not provided armaments to Russia. The United States is not providing assistance to Russia. Every single sanction that has been imposed on Russia remains in place. Every single sanction the president inherited remains in place.
Previous administration.
Right, but they're pretty sanctioned up. There's a lot of sanctions on already. My point being is that there's been no steps taken to relieve any of these things. These things continue to be in place, but we don't think it's constructive for me to stand here today and begin to issue threats about what we're going to do if Russia says no. Let's hope they say yes. At the end, let's understand, I remind everybody and bring you back to the point, the president's desire here is to bring about a lasting and enduring peace in Ukraine. He wants the shooting and the fighting to stop, not just for 30 days, not just for 60 days, but permanently. To do that, both sides have to come to the table. We are happy that the Ukrainians have agreed to do so. Now it is up to Russia to say yes. If Russia says yes, that's very good news, and we will begin that process and do everything we can to move that process forward. If they say no, then obviously we'll have to examine everything and sort of figure out where we stand in the world and what their true intentions are. I think it'll be, if they say no, it'll tell us a lot about what their goals are and what their mindset is. But I don't want to go into that before they've even answered us by issuing statements that are abrasive in any way. Our hope is that when we met with them last, they expressed a willingness under the right conditions, without elaborating on the right conditions, to bring an end to this conflict. That was our question when we met with them. I think I shared it with you that we're on our trip. The point of meeting with them was to find out, is this a war they wanted to end, or is this a war they just wanted to continue to in perpetuity until they achieved whatever goals they have in mind? And they expressed a willingness, under the right circumstances, which they did not define, to bring an end to this conflict. So we have Ukraine ready to come to the table. Now we need to get Russia to come to the table. If they do and the shooting stops, I think that's a very good day in the world. Obviously, no one here is pretending that that negotiation is going to be easy or fast or simple, but at least we've gotten to that point. If their answer is no, then obviously we'll have to deal with that, and we'll have to at that point make decisions on that basis. We're not there yet. Hopefully the answer is yes. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you.